Square Enix recently invited us to San Francisco to take a first look at Stormblood, the upcoming expansion to Final Fantasy XIV Online. During our hands-on time, we were able to try out the new jobs, Samurai and Red Mage, as well as see the new changes to all of the existing jobs. We explored several new zones, took a crack at one of the new dungeons, and we spent an hour with the game's director and producer, Naoki Yoshida. Initially, we were given a lengthy presentation about many of the changes to the core battle system, including new job abilities for every class, alterations to existing abilities, and the overhauled PvP battle system. Much of this information was later delivered to the public in the most recent live letter from the producer, so we won't spend too much time going over that familiar ground. What's important to take away is that Yoshida and the 14 team wanted to address some common issues with the job roles and battle systems, rather than relying on the existing system, which they felt was overwhelming to some players and to newcomers jumping in at Stormblood. The development team are culling many of the existing abilities to reduce the clutter. This means players will have fewer skills to worry about, allowing for a more streamlined experience that will reduce the disparity between players of various skill levels, particularly veterans and newcomers. One of the ways they hope to achieve this is by grouping up certain abilities under various categories, assigned to numerous roles. For example, there are 3 tank classes in the game, but only the Paladin could learn a crucial skill called Provoke, which allows them to grab hate back on an enemy from another party member. However, the 2 other tanks, Dark Knight and Warrior, did not get this ability by default. Instead, those players would have to switch over to the Paladin and unlock Provoke before they could use it as a special cross-class ability. Now, Provoke will be available to all 3 tanks at the same level, removing the need to play other jobs you might not have any interest in. All jobs required cross-class abilities to be played competently, so this is certainly a welcome change for newcomers who might have been overwhelmed by the ever-increasing amount of skills and actions being added. Another important change involves the auto-scaling of certain abilities so that you don't have to keep multiple versions of them on your hotbar. The example that best illustrates this is probably the fact that white mages used to need Stone 1, Stone 2, and Stone 3 on their hotbar at all times. If you just kept Stone 3 and entered a lower level instance, you'd have to swap out Stone 3 each time for Stone 1 or 2, and then remember to swap it back once you were done. Now, the game will automatically do this for you. Players will only need to place 1 stone spell on their hotbar, and it will scale as needed in certain situations to clear up space and reduce the tedious nature of swapping abilities. Perhaps the biggest change comes in the form of the new job gauges. Each job now has a unique visual gauge that helps to better alert the player to the activation and use of certain skills and abilities. Everyone has been guilty at one point or another of being in the wrong stance as a tank. The new job gauges are an easier-to-read device to inform you of which stance you're in to help avoid unnecessary mistakes. This will also help alert you to when certain abilities are ready to use, which will allow for potentially quicker judgment calls that could be the difference between defeat or success. Aside from the various changes to the core systems, we got to explore a few of the new environments in the game, including the new city of Kugane with its Eastern influences. It might conjure up some memories of Mists of Pandaria for any World of Warcraft veterans out there, but it's a very unique destination in the world of Final Fantasy XIV, unlike any previously seen. In fact, if you haven't been following Stormblood-related news for the past few months, you might not be aware that players will be traveling to a whole new continent in the game called Othard, which sits far to the east of Eorzea, the lands that served as the setting for A Realm Reborn and Heavensward. It's the first glimpse we've gotten at a larger world that's only been hinted at previously. We also got to explore 2 other areas, the Peaks and the Ruby Sea, complete with new enemies to fight and new sights to see. While in the Ruby Sea, we were able to try out the new ability to dive underwater and traverse a submerged realm for the first time. The concern here is one that's plagued virtually every other game with an underwater segment, especially other MMOs. From our limited time, the novelty of swimming underwater quickly wears out its welcome and feels no different than merely flying around zones in Heavensward. What's more concerning is that the developers confirmed there will be no underwater combat, so aside from traveling around in various gathering activities, there doesn't seem like a whole lot to actually do below the waves. Near the end, we got to try our hand at a brand new level 63 dungeon, Shisui of the Violent Tides. Despite being set beneath the water, it's still very much a traditional dungeon with the same format and structure we've seen time and time again. Fight your way through a few groups of enemies, and then fight through 3 different boss encounters. There's nothing special mechanically about being underwater, though it is a very beautiful setting. Also, since it's a level 63 dungeon, we only had the use of 2 of our new abilities. The first boss encounter is very straightforward, with simple mechanics we've seen countless times before. Then, the fight shifts indoors to an East Asian-style palace where you have to fight through some guards before arriving at the second boss. Again, the environment is gorgeous, but nothing particularly interesting is being thrown at you from a design or mechanic standpoint. The second boss, the Ruby Princess, does introduce a fun little gimmick to the fight. She'll cast Seduce on the party, but before the cast finishes, each party member must open a chest that turns them into a doll. Otherwise, they'll be under the boss's control and be forced to walk into the next AoE attack. The concept isn't entirely unique to veterans, but the implementation of the doll effect is a nice touch. Finally, you emerge outside and swim to the last stretch of the dungeon, which features more enemy groups accompanied by blowfish-like creatures that will begin to explode upon contact, which makes it a bit more chaotic than the previous two segments. After clearing the way forward, you'll take on the final boss in an arena in front of a pagoda. Shisui Yohi is a large tentacle monster that blends together various mechanics from older fights for the most challenging encounter of the dungeon. The dungeon is easily the highlight of our time with the game, though we did get to try out the new Stormblood jobs, Samurai and Red Mage. Red Mage is mostly a ranged caster that uses offensive spells derived from the Black Mage and White Mage tools. However, their unique mechanic involves using those abilities to build up white and black mana, which you can then spend to execute stronger attacks. Red Mages can also do a gap closer to get into melee range and execute a limited amount of melee-style attacks, and they can leap away from their opponents using another ability to resume their ranged spellcasting tactics. Samurai is a melee DPS job designed for close-quarters combat like the Monk, Dragoon, and Ninja. Their hook is the ability to power up 3 different types of energy that can then be unleashed to execute punishing attacks. Despite their grand entrance in the CG trailer reveal for Stormblood, their in-game animations aren't quite as flashy as one might expect. Still, given their attire and weapon of choice, it's a safe bet we'll be seeing a lot of players running around as Samurai once Stormblood arrives. The last few weeks have certainly seen a ton of information thrown at us regarding Stormblood and the huge changes coming, and even for a veteran player, it seems overwhelming. After spending several hours with this preview build, it doesn't feel like we've had nearly enough time to really get a feel for how Stormblood will turn out. However, we don't have to wait too much longer to see just how Stormblood stacks up to its predecessor Heavensward, as early access begins on June 16th.